All right, welcome in everybody. Welcome back to the matchup report. I'm your host as always, Tyler Blankenship, and with me, Jason Nieves. We're here excited for our Super Bowl preview show. I mean, we're going to be talking about the matchups like we always do. We're going to be recapping each teams and how they got to where they are now. Both teams obviously much deserve to be in the Super Bowl, so it's exciting to talk about their seasons, how they approach the offseason before going into this, and then how all that led to them now being in the Super Bowl. So a lot of exciting stuff to talk about with these teams, whether it just be the matchups and how they got here. So it might not be as long as the show we normally do, although every time I say that, I feel like we still go for a
Yeah, let's
while.
let's keep this reasonable.
Exactly. But yeah, so very exciting because I think this will be like the more and more I dived into it, I was like, this will be a really good matchup, I think. But how are you feeling today, man? You good?
I'm all good. I'm ready to talk.
Oh, good. That's like the main thing we need. So I'm good. Glad to hear. All right, so I mean, let's get into it, man. So we got obviously the New England Patriots against the Seattle Seahawks, two teams where I think if you, I didn't look at the betting odds, but if you probably looked at them at the beginning of the season, I feel like they were either team would be like top five, maybe. Like I don't think you would have had them in top five for each conference to go to the Super Bowl.
I would say probably more Seattle than New England, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Seattle definitely would have had better odds. I mean, this was, and we'll talk about it. Second year with Drake May, they had a new coach and all that. So, and you're in the division with the Bills, who everyone just expects to win that division with Josh Allen. But so a surprise season from them, and then with the Seahawks, the unknowns of a new offensive coordinator, new coach, and a lot of new our new quarterback, sorry, and a lot of newer players. So it's very interesting stories for both teams, I think. But I mean, let's get into it, man. I kind of wanted to start with the Patriots because like I said, they were the more unexpected team to be here. Um, like I said, you're going to the second year of Drake May after what was an impressive rookie season, and a guy that you and I both think could be a really good quarterback, and he's now proven that. He's potentially going to win the MVP here. It's between him and Matt Stafford. Well, still, it's crazy to me that we're about to play the Super Bowl and
Yeah.
we don't yet know who the MVP is or all the. I kind of hate how they space all this out, but yeah, so you're going to the second year with an up and coming quarterback, and you never know. It get hit, or you just continue to develop. But part of that is you also brought in Mike Vrabel to be your head coach after you had Gerard Mayo for the first year with Drake May. Fire him. You bring in Mike Vrabel, who also comes in with Josh McDaniels. So a lot of familiarity there with the Patriots organization, but still a big change. And I think the biggest part of that was the Patriots probably really wanted a culture change there in a way to, set what this team was going to be like the foundation going forward. I don't know if they expect a Super Bowl like matchup right away, but I mean, obviously they would have to be ecstatic about that. And then a lot of free agency signings. Like this team spent a lot of money. I think they were, if they weren't one, they were definitely like top five in free agency spending. But they bring in guys like very, very key contributors through free agency with players like Carlton Davis, Milton Williams, Stephon Diggs, Caleb Chason, Morgan Moses, so on and so forth. And then they drafted really well to go along with that, where you bring in Trayvon Henderson, part of your 1-2 punch in the backfield, who ended up leading your backfield in touches. You bring in Craig Woodson, who ended up being a really good safety for you as a starter, and then also obviously of course Will Campbell, who it's been up and down, a little bit more down in the playoffs than up, but he has been at least a solid starter for them for the most part of the season. And as a rookie, it's always hard to judge a rookie in their like in that first season as an O lineman because we've seen you want to see flashes and then you just build on that going forward. But a lot has been asked of him to protect Drake May on that left side against some very elite pass rushers so far throughout the playoffs, especially. So I think and like we've had our thoughts on Will Campbell, and we'll probably get into it more a little bit later. But for the most part, like that offseason really set the table for what this Patriot season was going to be. And going into it, everyone talked about how they would have like one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. But I don't want any of that to say I don't want any of that to diminish what they've done. Like they have certainly earned their way to the Super Bowl, especially after what they had to go through in the playoffs.
Yeah, for me, I think the two biggest things that stand out to me, and they're both free agency pickups, and it's one, Stephon Diggs on the offensive side of the ball for them because he's been their number one receiver, which was a surprise. He was coming off a big injury last season, and it was like, all right, like you have a clear need at receiver, and you really want to have someone who can connect with the Drake May to be that number one option. And I think I'll admit that I was one of the skeptical people who was like, really, Stephon Diggs is the guy that you're going as your number one option, especially at this point in his career, coming off an injury. Like all of it seemed a bit too. I don't want to say a bit too easy, but like a bit like it felt like they were like, oh, we just have a lot of faith in Drake May being able to execute, and that clearly their trust was very valid. But I do think Stephon Diggs was a crucial part of that, where it's like you get him and you can see like just literally looking like he was their leading receiver in half of their games for them, which is more than you can want from a player, especially at that age, and once again coming off a major injury. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it's Milton Williams, and I think it's interesting. They were doing the Super Bowl media junkets, and somebody had asked him about just the Eagles last season, and apparently they didn't offer him even a contract, which I took it as a sign of like respect, but I know other people may be like, oh, that's so insane. But I do think it is the Eagles realizing like, yeah, we're not even going to waste your time and try to offer you a dumb contract when we know you're going to go out there and make more money. We're not going to be disrespectful towards you. But it is just kind of crazy that the Eagles just didn't offer him anything. But you see why he was such a big target for the Patriots and really any team that was really trying to improve the defensive line in the free agency, just because of the instant and immediate impact he's had. And I think it's one, not to bring the Eagles into it, but a credit to the Eagles, defensive line coaches and really the defense of being able to, Vic Fangio really being able to develop a player like that, but then also Milton Williams being able to continue off of that and continue that success. I think so many times we see these free agency, transition. It's like, oh, like they're gonna do so well there, they're gonna do great, and then they get there and it's like, well, like they weren't the same players before, and I think I think it's very hard in today's today's era of NFL and hell even all sports to come in and make an immediate impact and people just unanimously say like that was a good pickup. And I think Milton Williams is one of those players where it's like we can look at every stat, every numerical, thing on a sheet and say that he has made the Patriots better.
Yeah, pairing him with Barmore there in the middle of that D line was a fantastic move by them. And it's like, yeah, you can get why the Eagles, because the Eagles have the guys waiting like a Jomo in there, and so it's like you're not going to spend all that money because yeah, the Eagles were in a kind of a transition period here with their D line here coming up soon. But yeah, he is one of their, you could argue he was their best pickup in the offseason. It's between him and Diggs, like you said. Diggs was their only, he just over 1,000 yards. I think he had like 1,013. Yeah, led their team in yards and catches, not in touchdowns, but I mean like he really did like have some games where he was very much needed for this team, and by all accounts, from the locker room. He was very important for a lot of those younger receivers that they have in there with that, Demario Douglas or Kayshon Boutte, like whoever it was, like they all like were a lot of high praise for Stephon Diggs in that locker room.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
I just want to mention that's kind of funny considering like what we know about like Stephon Diggs and or not that stuff, but I mean like there's like that viral video of like the Vikings locker room and they're going around and asking like who would you not want to date your sister, and like Stephon Diggs is like everyone is like looking around like oh like Diggs, and I always think back to that every time we talk about like Stephon Diggs being a leader, and being such a vital part of that locker room. But I do think like it is true, and I think that one speaks to just the evolution of him as a player and as a person, being able to now be kind of in the veteran years of his career and being able to be a mentor and understand that he's trying to be a mentor to these Patriots receivers. So I just think that's really cool to see.
yeah, and I think because like we're not going to touch too much on some of the off the field stuff with him, which is a problem, but. I think from all accounts, it's more about like how he approaches work, like how he went about practice and preparing for the games, and just showing these younger receivers how to be professionals in the NFL. I think that was more of the leadership aspect of it, when it came to Stephon Diggs in that room. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, all that leads up to them. Like just looking over some of their highlights for like their numbers at the end of the regular season. Their offense was second in points per game and third in yards per game. They were a top five passing offense in the league, by a lot of accounts. I mean, yards per game in passing, yards per play in passing, they were first in that. They were tied for fifth in touchdowns. If you just look at like EPA, their success rate when it came to passing, they were number one in that. They were very, very good at the deep explosive passes. They were number one in the league at that. This is something I don't want to say they relied on, but it was a major part of what their offense was Drake May hitting on those explosive plays. But then on the flip side, there were some, it wasn't perfect. Their O line still has its issues. When we talked about last season how bad this O line was, how they was, if it wasn't the worst, it was definitely like bottom three worst O lines in the NFL. It was probably between them and the Texans, obviously, and the Raiders. But I mean, they were sixth in QB pressure allowed. So Drake May was pressured like 38% of the time. Drake May was sacked 47 times, which was top five in the league, or bottom five, however you want to word that. Yeah, it was fourth. He was sacked fourth most this season compared to all the quarterbacks. So while they were able to hit on some explosive plays and like have this, offense that was able to move the ball down the field, it was a very boomer bust at times because of the O line not allowing to give Drake May the protection that he always needed.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm looking at, and I'm kind of jumping from the offensive line and just speaking about the Patriots as a whole, is that like, and just looking at their schedule, which I want to get out the way now because it's a big talking point, and
Yeah.
I do think it is interesting. And what I'll say is that I think that this, if you would have told me week one of the playoffs that this was an issue, I would not only believe you, but I would agree with you and say that I'm interested to see what it would look like in the playoffs. We are now at the Super Bowl. They're in it, and they win against top defenses like Houston, Denver, and like I can't sit here and continue in good faith to say that like it's an issue, because good teams find ways to win games. And I think at the bottom line, no matter like who you're playing, your schedule is in front of you. You have to play them, and it's really disingenuous and kind of disrespectful to the Patriots to continue to sit here and say like, oh yeah, they had an easy schedule. They didn't play anybody, and I think yes, like you can poke a lot of holes in their schedule, but this was a team that started off the season 1-2, won 10 games straight. Like got things rolling. Drake May once again is looking like an MVP candidate. Like everything that needed to go right for the Patriots went right. Free agency picks hit. Your draft picks at least half hit, and they're still. This is the floor for where they're at. Like these are all positive things that I think like the general fan base and general NFL fan base look at and say, well, like you played the Raiders and lost to them week one. And it's like we are very far removed from week one Patriots. We are very far removed from the end of the regular season Patriots. Like this is a different team that like is in a different rhythm and can't continue to have the burden of their schedule put on them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that definitely was a way in the playoffs to be like, okay, you guys all think that we were just, rolling through all these bad defenses. Well, look at us now. Like you said, Texas and Denver, and then of course now they have to play the Seahawks. So it's like if the Patriots do come out on the other side of this with a ring, that is a crazy run to go through. Where that's basically that is the top three defenses in the league that they would have gone through to win that ring. So crazy impressive by them, man.
Well, they didn't go through the Eagles, but
Well, the Eagles weren't top three defense. I'll give them top five, but yeah. But like you said, you mentioned earlier, kind of like the defense of side and like how it wasn't just the offense, right? It was a whole team effort led by Mike Vrabel and the culture that he was setting there. A large part of that was the defense, which was eighth in yards per game, ninth in TDs allowed. They were better against the run than they were the pass. They were sixth in rushing yards per game, but ninth in passing yards per game. So obviously, like, still good. And then they had the 10th highest QB pressure percentage. And they didn't have to do it with a lot of blitzing. They were like league average when it came to blitz rate. Both of these teams really were. Neither of these teams really blitzed a lot. So it just shows like players like Caleb Von Chason, who was a great addition for them, an underrated signing, honestly. Landry, Milton Williams, Barmore, like all those guys were able to get to them without that extra help. And a large part of that is also because of that talented secondary that they have with the guys like, Marcus Jones, who is just amazing for the team, like a great playmaker for them. But then on the exterior, you have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis holding things down as well. A great team effort from them in general to get to this point. And like you said, you have to find ways to win these games, and you beat the Broncos 10-7 to even get to the Super Bowl. So, it's not always going to be these explosive offensive games that are going to get you to the win. It's sometimes you just got to have these gritty, hard fought wins.
Yeah, like I said, like everything that needed to go right for the Patriots went right. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that at the same time, you still have to take care of business. Like, and I think there's so many times where it's like, oh, like, well, the Broncos had a backup quarterback. C.J. Stroud had a bad game, and it's like, yes, but if they had lost that game, the narrative would have been even worse. Where it's like, oh, you lost to a backup quarterback. You lost to C.J. Stroud when he's he's throwing four interceptions. Like
In one
these are
half.
all things that like it's very easy to flip and say, well, what if this, had happened? And I think that is what makes like NFL discourse as a whole so toxic. Now, and it's all across sports, but we try to be different here on the matchup.
I mean, we try. We're a little toxic sometimes. It's okay, mainly towards each other.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, so like you said, a crazy impressive season from them. I mean, you got to think about players like Ramondre Stevenson, who like even earlier in the season he was struggling with those fumbles, but then he becomes an important part of this team later on, especially in the playoffs. And there's something I want to touch on him with later on in this game where it's like he really became important for them as they started going against these like better defenses. And it's just, there was a lot of grit with this team. There's something you hear a lot with teams like with coaches with like Vrabel and Dan Campbell, but it is a true thing, man. Like the reason they brought him in, obviously there's familiarity there with the organization, but they wanted to set a tone and a culture early on. And I think, you had mentioned like the start that they had were like 1-2 or what it was, but then,
Yeah.
they had that game against the Bills that was a really great win for them early on in the season. And that's what, after that win was like when they went on that crazy win streak.
Well, so they played Carolina week 4, and that was the start of the win streak, and then it was Buffalo the week after, and
Right.
that was either way though. Like those two games were like the igniting like
Two playoff
here's where
teams.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just I mean, like, because I mean, we harped on this schedule thing a lot, like, because it rightfully so, it is a worry for you going into the playoffs. It's like, look, yeah, you had a great season, but the defenses you played against were the defenses that you've played against, and we know what the numbers are for those guys and how easy it was to move the ball down the field at times. But then for you to then show it again in the playoffs, it's like, okay, now, yeah, clearly this is the real deal. So, what, yeah. But then now on the other side, let's go to talk about the team they're going to be playing against, the Seahawks. Another kind of crazy offseason, man. Like they fired their offensive coordinator from last year. They bring in Clint Kubiak, who is now going to be the Raiders head coach, reported. But it's Mike
Allegedly,
allegedly.
you gotta wait to into the Super Bowl, but
It's happening.
it seems like it's happening.
Yeah, and he seemed to be the guy that they rightfully were targeting for most of this process for them in the coaching search because of the turnaround that you saw with the Seattle offense, which was led by Sam Darnold, another guy who they brought in. He plays for the Vikings last year with a 14-win season. They let him go because they had drafted J.J. McCarthy, Mr. Nine, so they wanted to give him a chance to be the starter there. We all know how that went. We don't have to talk about it. But you bring Sam Darnold in, who just had that very successful season, a little bit of a falter in the playoffs, obviously. So you bring him in. It's kind of like a high risk, high reward signing in my mind because you're like, okay, can we redo what you just did with the Vikings and then just have more success because of the team around him is just so much better. And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, Mike McDonald and his defense were really good last year. And, it was the same thing like we saw with the Ravens where it was like, it was a little shaky at the start. It wasn't bad, but it was a little shaky at the start. But then we especially saw in the second half of his first season with this team that the defense really started to improve and be elite. And then this year, it was just the entire year they were elite. It was insane to watch this team just attack people on defense. It was awesome to watch. But yeah, so you bring in Sam Darnold, Clint Kubiak as your offensive coordinator. You sign players like DeMarcus Lawrence, much to the ire of Micah Parsons, who also didn't end up being on the Cowboys anyways. But then Cooper Kupp, who ended up being a very important signing for them. He's had some clutch moments for them in the playoffs, not just with his route running, but his blocking and his leadership. He's a hometown kid, basically. They re-signed Ernest Jones, a linebacker that they had traded for in the last season, who has been a very key contributor for them in the middle of that defense as one of the best linebackers in the league in my mind. You draft a guy like Emmanuel Wari, who didn't get to play right away in this season. He missed like the first 2 or 3 games, but then he comes in, and now we're all talking about him being one of the best defensive players, not even just like safeties, but just one of the best defensive players in the league because of what he can do with his size and his athleticism and how smart he is in coverage and how he's able to just maintain sticky coverage all the time. So you get all that out of a rookie there. But then they also draft Gray Zabel in the first round, who ended up being, it was kind of like you get him out of Dakota and it's like, I don't know, like we'll see, is he actually going to be this like really good starter for you right away at a position that was really, really important for this team to improve on coming into the season because the interior of the line was really bad the previous season with Geno Smith. But then you bring in Zabel, and he has been a revelation for them. I mean, he's been fantastic year round. His like IQ is insane. He'll be talking like you'll hear about Leonard Williams talk about Zabel as if he's a vet. He's saying like, oh yeah, Zabel came up to me saying like, oh, the other team's O lineman is doing this, so I should attack them that way. The fact that a rookie O lineman on your team is telling a veteran, really, really, really good D lineman like, hey, I think you should do this, and they're listening to him, that should tell you all you need to know about this rookie guard that they brought in. So, really impressive offseason for them, and it's very different from, I think Mina Kimes tweeted this out actually about how the change in philosophy with how this team was drafting, where it was kind of like there's always the philosophy of like best player available versus like what your team need is. And I feel like the Seahawks, and this is something she pointed out, credit to her, they were, and she's a Seahawks fan as well, so she pays close attention to them. But she was saying, it seemed like they were really kind of drafting for need, or like the seasons kind of like not last season, but like in previous seasons. But then the last two seasons, it was more just like, okay, like why don't we just get like good players in the building? Basically, let's just focus on that. So that's how you get Emmanuel Warrior, Grace Abel, Devon Witherspoon, guys like that who can come in and contribute for you right away and help build the core of what this team really is now, which is a very aggressive team, both on offense and defense, that can just hit you in the mouth and really do it all game. They keep that energy up all game, and it's all led by their head coach, Mike Macdonald, who has just been fantastic from the start.
Yeah, you mentioned the physicality, and I think that's like it's something that's really just stands out to me with this team. It's a combination of physicality and speed, and they operate that both on the defense and the offense. Like focusing on the offense in particular, you have literally like their running back combo is that run power option, and I think like not only is it a run power option, Charbonnet's out for well. I say the remainder of the season. It's one game left, but it's been out the past couple weeks, I should say. But before he was there, throughout the entire season, it was like, all right, Charbonnet is like your goal line back, where it's like he's stealing all of Kenneth Walker's touchdowns. And Kenneth Walker is like your three down back, where he can get you everything you need, like on the field, like pushing the ball down, but not just like as a running back, but also an option in the pass, an option in pass protection. And I think that was a value that it's. I think running backs are a position where it's like you aren't sitting there going, all right, we need to draft a running back, unless you're, I think, Kansas City now, but they'll probably get Breece Hall in free agency or something. But it isn't a position that you look to attack with. It's like, oh, you get a later round back and you're satisfied with that. And I think sometimes it's very much a like, you look and see like who's available, you really kind of analyze it, and then you hope for the best from there and hope that they can take off based off of their skills. And I think the Seahawks have done a great job with that, both with Kenny Walker and Charbonnet. And I think that's been really cool to see how they've continued to develop together as a whole and how they're using them. And it goes a lot back to Kubiak's scheme and what he's able to do with it, and really kind of diversifying that. And then you get who I think should be offensive player of the year, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who has just been phenomenal. And you talk about a lot of these Ohio State receivers are, and especially the position that he was put in since being drafted by the Seahawks, where it's like, all right, you're behind a DK Metcalf, you're behind a Tyler Lockett. They trade DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett is going as well. Like, and it's like, all right, you're putting this on a receiver who was the third string a season ago. And it was really interesting to hear the discourse around it, to like people to kind of predict where JSN would improve, because we knew it was going to be a jump, but I don't think anybody could predict that he jumps to an offensive player of the year candidate in a year. And I think the potential was there and the signs were there, but he really just jumps off the page as like one of the best receivers in the league now. And it is very clear that it isn't just a scheme thing, because I don't think you really have to scheme JSN. Just hey, line him up, and if he gets in man coverage, I'm looking JSN's way. And I think that is exactly what Sam Darnold needed in an offense, in a system like this, where he's going in. And I remember the one thing when we found out Sam Darnold was going to Seattle, and we had talked about this on the pod about a year ago, and it was like, well, Sam Darnold struggles with pressure, and you're putting him on a team that is like offensive line wise, he's going to be under a lot of pressure. And not only did they improve the offensive line, but they made sure to scheme around any issues that would come with the lack of pass protection. And I think that is something that really went under the radar, because we weren't seeing Sam Darnold sacked a lot. We weren't seeing him under too much pressure, and we weren't seeing him really uncomfortable in the pocket, which is why we saw Sam Darnold be consistently talented, but also just making the right plays and making winning plays for Seattle. So that's all on the offensive side of the ball.
Oh, well, real quick, because with the JSN, I remember what we were saying about JSN going into the season. Not that we didn't like, we all thought he was a really good receiver, but it was also his move to the outside where he was mainly he led the league last year as a slot receiver in slot yards, and then he moves to the outside because remember they signed Cooper Kupp, and we're sitting there thinking like, okay, Cooper Kupp's also primarily been mostly like a slot kind of guy, so I was like, how are they going to figure this out? Because you got rid of DK Metcalf, like so it's kind of an unknown like how effective he would be as a more of a perimeter receiver, and like you said, he took off, he took full advantage of that, and like you said, now he was in my mind he probably did end up being like the best receiver in football this year, and it was awesome. And it was how they used him as well, right? It wasn't just that he was lining him on the outside. I mean, especially in the playoffs, we've seen like lining him up in the backfield, teams not knowing like how to cover him in that situation, and it was his speed, his route running, his IQ level. It's like everything that he does. It really shined through this year with Darnold and Kubiak right there with him. And then you mentioned the O line with Darnold and protecting him. This O line was one of the top five in QB pressures allowed. So Sam Darnold wasn't getting hit a lot. I mean, he was league average when it came to sacks. He was sacked 27 times this year. I mean, think about we just talked about Drake May. Drake May was sacked 20 more times than that. So it really was a great job with the offense making that shift, saying like, okay, we're bringing in this guy, like you said, who in the past has shown that like when he's got pressure at his face, he's not always going to be the best at protecting the ball. So they made a conscious effort to help protect him, and it clearly worked.
Yeah. Swapping over to the defense now. I said speed and power kind of exemplifies this, and I think when you think of that, I think the defense really comes to mind first, which is why I want to start with the offense to show that it works both ways. But when you have so many different Swiss Army knives on this team, it makes your life as an offensive coordinator, as an opposing quarterback, and just as an opposing fan really stressful because you're going into this game not knowing really how to game plan around them. And I think that is the issue when we're talking about like Super Bowl and it's going to be fine margins. Like even in a game like last season in Super Bowl where it's a blowout, it still was a game of fine margins where the Eagles are executing and really dominating from the defensive line perspective and just running, bulldozing the Chiefs offensive line and getting opportunities. Like that is one area where it's like they just excelled in so well that it didn't matter. And then you turn to the offense and they're doing enough to like not just enough, but they're excelling enough where it's like, all right, take advantage of our field goal range, take advantage of the opportunities we're given and capitalize on that. And I think that even if this game turns out to be a blowout, it'll still be because of a fine margin that one team was able to exploit over the other. And I think it's going to be very hard to find these margins of being able to defeat Seattle because there's so many areas where they just excel in. The defensive line you mentioned, like, having DeMarcus Lawrence come in, and once again, when he first signed with them, he was like, yeah, like I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like I could win a Super Bowl. And I was one of those people where I was like, well, Seattle is closer to a Super Bowl than Dallas, but like I don't know if like they're like that much closer where it's like they're Super Bowl favorites. And then here he is a couple months later saying, well, I fucking told you guys.
Yeah.
So he's been one of the crucial factors, especially at his age. I don't say it's surprising, but it's always encouraging to see that these players are able to continue to excel well into their career. And the same thing with like Leonard Williams and just the entire defensive line as a whole. And then I'm trying to like think of like a weak spot, and I think like if there's one at times you could say it's been the other DBs. Rick Willen has had kind of an up and down season, but even then like I still think it's been more ups than downs, and I think there's so much of the Seattle defense where it's like you mentioned Nicky Manwaria and the role he plays and really kind of being like the Swiss Army knife for this team, whether it's coming down and providing run support or of course in the pass support. Like he does everything for this defense. So they're playing a lot of just team ball, but they're doing it with speed, with power, and just with intentionality.
Yeah, for context with their defense, they were first in points per game. They only allowed 17 points per game during the season. Sixth in yards, second in yards per play, 10th in passing yards per game, third in rushing yards per game, and they were actually, in my mind, the number one rushing defense in the league because of like just the success rate that you would have. They were first in that when it came to running against them. You just really weren't going anywhere that much. They were fourth in QB pressures and second in total QB pressures in general. And they, like I said, they didn't blitz that much either. Like I talked about the Patriots not blitzing. The Seahawks only blitz like 22% of the time. And then I mean, we've talked about a lot of times like how many different players were generating pressure for the Seahawks defense. They had five different players get 40 plus pressures on the season. DeMarcus Lawrence led them with 51, but then you got guys like Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, Nwosu, Boye Mafe, all with 40 plus as well, and Derek Hall right behind them there. So I mean, you're just getting production for so many different guys. And that's part of what makes them so successful as well, is that when you have this many edge rushers and just pass rushers in general, whether across the D line, you can go at people in waves, and then you have fresh legs throughout the entire game because you have guys like who can just rotate in kind of like a hockey lineup like that. And it's just, we've seen that before with the super successful defenses in the past that have won Super Bowls, where it's like if you're able to rotate guys in and out like that, like we've seen the Eagles do in the past, and like the Broncos have done it, like we've seen that in recent years. It's just when you have a team like that with so much talent able to get after the quarterback, it just makes it so difficult when that team is fresh and your O line is dog tired in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. But and this is the thing about Seattle, is that it doesn't really matter when you get to the fourth quarter because they're up by 20 by the time they
Yeah.
get there. And I think that's been the crazy part about all this, is that it's the fashion in which they're beating teams. We aren't seeing them, like, well, obviously we've seen them in close battles, and especially against the Rams. Like that's just competitive nature there. But most of these games, it feels like, oh, Seattle, and especially in the later half of the regular season, where it's like, oh, Seattle's up 20, like, all right, JSN's getting a rest, Sam Darnold's out. Like, you don't need to have to really stress too much about this team. And I like, and especially in the later half of the season, like it's interesting to see how, like, because we always talk about teams just improving upon like their season and continuing to progress. And I think Seattle has been one of these teams where it's like it's really been impressive to see how they continue to progress and become more dominant throughout the season.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, that's a bit of a recap for, like you said, like how we got here, how these teams performed throughout their season, and why they are now in the Super Bowl. But so let's now talk about the Super Bowl and the matchups that we're going to see in this. And I'm curious, I actually wanted to start with you. Where did you want to start with the matchups between these teams?
So for me, I mentioned him, so I'll get him out the way now. It's Rick Woolen. I want to start with Rick Woolen against Keishon Boutte. I don't know, a lot of attention is going to be on Stephon Diggs and Witherspoon, but I mentioned the fine margins, and I think when you're looking, you need to take advantage of every opportunity you can. When you're looking at Rick Woolen, he had one of the drives of all drives this past week, last game against the Rams, where it was a play that or a penalty that negated a fourth down stop, and then he allowed a touchdown and literally just blew his coverage, and then got pieced up by not Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. And I think when you look at that and you see that is, I mentioned like potential weaknesses, and you're analyzing where to attack, it's going to have to be the passing defense, because you mentioned the run. You're not going to get much on this run defense, and I could see, like, especially if you're trying to wear down the Seattle team, like maybe that becoming an issue. But it's just going to be so difficult that I think they have to kind of lean more on the passing game, and I think naturally Stephon Diggs is going to get a lot of attention. So I'm turning to this Keishon Boutte one as like as an opportunity for the Patriots to kind of really poke at something and take advantage. And I just want to read off like his or Keishon Boutte's like stats the past couple weeks, because against the Chargers in week 1, it was 4 catches, 6 yards. Against Houston, it was 3 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown that was on Derek Stingley. And then you get to the Denver game, and it's like, all right, 1 catch, 6 yards on 6 targets, but it was
Snow game.
Snow in the second half. But at the same time, I still think you should target him. Like he is like he's a very solid number 2 option for them. And I think you need to have some type of relief to not rely on Stephon Diggs the entire game. And I think this could be a matchup where you're looking and saying, like, all right, Stephon Diggs is having trouble getting separation from Witherspoon. Like, what can we cook up for Boutte and really kind of find something to get him open and get him into space to make a game-changing play?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think we kind of mentioned earlier that the Patriots lead the league in explosive pass plays, but the Seahawks are also the best at stopping those explosive pass plays. But I think you're right. If there is anyone who should go out, and maybe it is Tariq Woolen because of the boomer bust nature of his coverage, he can give you really tight, like good coverage, staying in phase the entire route. But at the same time, a lot of these Seahawks players are very aggressive in how they attack the ball when it is in the air. So a guy like Tariq Woolen could be one to target with a guy like Keishan Booty, like you mentioned, who we've seen have those explosive plays even against great DBs. So yeah, I like that. I like that one a lot. Um, my first one, I had the
I don't
okay.
like how you giggled.
Well,
That
because
like that is
I mentioned
never a good start
because I
before you.
mentioned him earlier. I talked about. I said I was going to bring up Ramondre Stevenson again. His pass protection has been really, really important and key for this Patriots offense, especially as like I said, in the playoffs, they've gone against these elite defenses and they've needed that extra protection because we talked about how like, this O line has improved from the previous season, but it's still not fantastic, right? Like I said, Drake may got sacked 47 times. So Ramondre Stevenson has been a key piece for them in protecting Drake May, and he's going to be needed very much so again against the Seahawks defense that we just lauded for being so good at getting after the quarterback wave after wave of player after player. So that's one thing I'm going to be looking at here. Can Ramondre Stevenson be that extra bit of protection for Drake May and give him the time to create those explosive plays that you just talked about? So that is one matchup I'm looking at here as well. Whereas like I said, they don't blitz a lot, so maybe he can just be chip or help out with those, or just stay back in general for that extra protection. Really curious to see how Ramondre Stevenson does against that Seahawks defense in that way, not just with his legs and running the ball, but how he is as a pass protector as well.
Yeah. You mentioned pass protection, so I'm gonna my next matchup is going to be in the pass protection front, and specifically for the Patriots, and that's what we talked about him, Will Campbell.
Yeah.
And this matchup is going to be, I'm assuming, if you're Seattle, I think you send DeMarcus Lawrence over there, and so I have this Will Campbell versus DeMarcus Lawrence because and this feels like the most like I'm going to teach you a lesson matchup of all time, where it's like you have the veteran and you have the young rookie who is about to learn, and especially at this stage and being his it's his first season, so this is going to be from a mental standpoint. You have a player that has literally worked his entire career to get here and has been in purgatory in Dallas. And he's been one of the players that I really liked, but I haven't been able to cheer him because he's on the Cowboys or was. And now it's really cool to see him in this spotlight. And you contrast it with a rookie who is I don't want to say he's just happy to be there because he has had a solid season, but I think the Patriots as a whole, their timeline wasn't. Well, they wouldn't have said a year ago that they would be in the Super Bowl. So this is a team that still has a lot of room to grow and a lot of improvement to be seen. And Will Campbell is one of those pieces where you're looking and saying we are really, not that he's been bad once again, but you're really hoping that he continues to progress to what you think he can be, which is a great staple of your offensive line, and he's just not there yet. So this is going to be an interesting, once again, a veteran versus rookie matchup where you have a hungry DeMarcus Lawrence coming at a rookie and Will Campbell.
Well, my next one would be you talked about Stephon Diggs going against some of the secondary, specifically with the that you talked about that much. I'm sorry, but then so I'm looking at on the other side JSN against the Pats secondary, and I wanted to kind of look at individual matchups here. Like it would be a lot of fun, like the one-on-one matchups between him, Christian Gonzalez, or Carlton Davis, even Marcus Jones could be a lot of fun. But my main thing is like how are they going to react to him when he is lined up in the backfield? We saw that the Rams really struggled to know what to do with JSN when he was lined up in the backfield. So now I'm curious, what is the Patriots' plan for that? Are they going to have someone travel with him and spy basically constantly on him? Is that going to be Marcus Jones traveling with him in those times, and then you kind of like trade him off to the whoever the outside corner is? Like I really want to see how that goes, and then just how are they going to be able to handle his speed and him going across the middle? Are you going to have a safety shade towards him? So the plan for JSN is going to be really important, and I think that lends into the other matchup, Rashid Shaheed. Someone we talked about a lot last week, and his ability to stretch the field and how important he is with just the threat of the speed that he has. And there was a really good stat that NGS put out about Rashid Shaheed and how important he is in that aspect. He's been targeted on just 14% of his routes since he was acquired by the Seahawks, but I mean, he's been used as a field stretcher in that. According to NGS, he's been averaging 15 yards of route depth while running vertical routes. Which is all higher than he's ever had in his career so far at this point with the Saints and then with the Seahawks. and he's running like he is sprinting down the field. Like he's like he is getting down there. He's trying to stretch that out, open up things underneath for guys like Cooper Cup and JSN going across the field. So a guy like Rashid Shaheed matching that with JSN, and then that's where on the other receiver Cooper Cup, I can't wait to see that matchup with Marcus Jones. It's like this isn't Cooper Cup of the old, but he still has that ability with him to separate at times. But Marcus Jones is so athletic. I think he could be a key in this to shut down that part of their offense there.
Yeah. I will say that it would be kind of foolish to say like the matchup is JSN versus just one person because this entire Patriots defense is going to be matching up with JSN.
Yeah.
It isn't a singular responsibility on one person because of how dynamic he is and how much you have to account for him. This isn't it's like look at the stats. He was the leading receiver for the Seahawks in every game but one. And that one game was a 23-0 win over the Vikings where you didn't even need him. Because the Vikings were the Vikings this season. They were really struggling. But either way, like all that to say, when you have all of that, you have to not just account for it, but literally you have to bracket him, do whatever you can, like to ensure that he is not getting anything, which to me makes this matchup naturally, once again go to the second, which is Rashid Shaheed, and I'm really interested to see him be. You mentioned the field stretching part, but I'm really interested to see him being used. Well, not just as a field stretcher, but besides that, like what other ways that they can create with him? Because I think yes, you can use him as a decoy to open up things like, on the field for JSN or one of your tight ends. But I really want to see like him be used as a second string option, where it's like, all right, like we have JSN, he's all the focus is going to be on him. What other ways can we use you besides using you to stretch the field? Like he's immensely talented, and I think yes, the speed is a big factor for that. But try to get him into some short pass action to try to get him into space and stuff like that. Especially if all the focus is going to be on JSN.
Well, and we've seen that they like to hand him the ball as well. Like he's been like at times like it's not like a consistent thing, but like when he has handed the ball in these rushing attempts, he can create explosive plays. The Seahawks receivers actually led the league in explosive rushes this season, so that's another aspect that the Patriots are going to have to worry about going into this with this complicated and explosive and really fun offense that Kubiak puts together with the entire offense. Sticking with the Seahawks offense, though, I did want to move. Like we talked about Kenneth Walker and how good and he's been for the team and how important he is for the team now, especially that Charbonnet is out. But we've seen him really he's been able to take that lead role like fully and be so important for this team in the playoffs, and he's done an exceptional job. What always really impressed me with him though is his patience. If you look at his numbers, he gets past the line of scrimmage later than I think any other starting running back in the league. And you notice that when you watch him, it's kind of like what you used to see with like Le'Veon Bell, where he would get the ball and he's not just like getting and running like head first, right? It was just like the vision is there, and he's it because of the guys in front of him.
Okay, I need to clarify. Le'Veon Bell's patience was something different. That man would receive the ball, and it felt like he would literally just like stop and be like.
Yeah.
I don't like that. It should open up. No, it's okay. We'll wait here. And it felt like there were times where you were just waiting and waiting for him to attack a space. And then it was like, oh, there's a small opening. And he would just cut through it.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, it's not exactly that, but it's pretty similar. It's around like 3 seconds. But when you have guys like Gray Zabel in front of you, like we said, the rookie, who are opening up these lanes for you, who are able to just, we've seen these old linemen with specifically Gray Zabel talk about with their offense where they're saying we block until we hear the whistle. Like we're not going to stop going no matter how long the play is going. We're going to keep blocking because we know how patient Kenneth Walker is. We're going to give him that opportunity to find that hole and break through and create those explosive runs. And, we know with Kenneth Walker, he's not going down on first contact. He's always going to keep going forward. He's going to keep his legs moving. He's just so physical, and he's fighting for every yard. So the yards after catch and the rushing after contact, like all of that is going to be really, really important for the Patriots to make sure that they're flying to the ball and stopping these guys at contact.
Yeah, I think the matchup there, and this is really going to be a hole for the Patriots defense because of how elusive and physical not just all the Seahawks players are, but it's going to be like Patriots versus tackling. I think is the real matchup there, where it's like Patriots versus wrapping up. Like what are we? You need to see that you are fully wrapping up these players because you have a JSN that's elusive, you have Rashid Shaheed that's elusive, you have a Kenneth Walker that's both physical and elusive. These are all things that like it's going to be very interesting to see how the Patriots as a whole are able to just be physical and match the physicality of Seattle.
Yeah. Did you have another matchup you want to talk about?
So those are the first two that came to mind. So I'm passing this back to over to you.
Okay, because I have like a 2-for-1 with Drake May. One is tight window throws. He led the league in tight window throws, which for those who don't know, a tight window it's considered a tight window throw if there's a yard or less of separation between the receiver and the defender. So he led the league in those throws, and he was really good at completing those throws. But we also know, and we saw against Matt Stafford, the Seahawks DBs are very good at staying in phase with receivers, even the elite ones, and making these tight window throws just that much more difficult. So I think if this Patriots offense is going to have success, they're really going to have to rely on Drake May hitting on those again. And, the guys like Stephon Diggs can still get separation like that, and Booty can stretch the field, like you mentioned, but they're going to need Drake May to be pinpoint this game with the way that these DBs play and how aggressive they are in coverage. And then the other side with Drake May is his mobility. We've talked about this all playoffs about his legs and how important they are to this offense with the Patriots, and how it's not just him scrambling and getting away from plays and making something out of nothing, but it's really like the early down stuff too. It's not like the third and fourth down stuff. He will run on early downs and make those third downs a lot easier for the team, or just get the first and on that first and second down with his legs in general. So that's going to be a big test for the Seahawks defense, I think, is being able to contain Drake May and make sure that his legs aren't a big factor in this game, because I do think him hitting those tight window throws and being able to use his legs are real keys to the Patriots offense having a lot of success in this game.
Yeah, and especially if the Patriots offensive line is able to hold up against the Seattle defensive line, because then once the play breaks down and things get messy, then I'm really interested to see what that looks like, and really the offensive line's aspect of this, because they will dictate a lot of that and how much we see Drake May on the move. But so there is one more that I thought of that I had written down. And I naturally always skip over some parts of my notes. But and I think this is, to me, is the biggest factor of what this game will look like, and it's time of possession.
Yeah.
The Patriots were a great team when it came to time possession. They were 6th in the league in terms of like most time possession in the league. And I really think that if the Patriots are going to win this game, it's going to come down to them managing the clock and really keeping the Seattle offense off the field. And you have a very difficult, tall task ahead of you, because this is a Seattle defense that, once again, is physical and fast. But if you're able to at least somewhat wear them down, somewhat have these long drives where you're putting possessions together and stacking them and stacking good plays and first downs, you're going to, well, hopefully try to wear the Seattle defense down. You're going to, could be able to manage the clock, be able to keep Drake May on the field, keep your defense off the field. I think that is the Patriots' key to winning this game, where it's like that is how you do it, where you keep away the best offense in the league and you don't let them get their firepower out on the field. In that sense, it once again is going back to a Ramondre Stevenson, back to a Trayvon Henderson, and being able to use them, especially a Ramondre Stevenson, being that physical back. He needs to take care of the ball. He needs to be physical. He needs to match the intensity of the Seattle defense to be able to wear the Seattle defense down, stay on the field and really drain the clock for the Patriots offense. And I think that, like, once again, that's their key to winning this game to me.
I agree. And in the same vein, that's part of where Sam Darnold's going to be important in this game, and not turning the ball over. I mean, I know it's a pretty obvious statement, but if he's not turning the ball over and the Seahawks are also able to control the clock a little bit, that's going to be really important. I mean, Sam Darnold had 14 interceptions this year, twice as many that Drake May had. Of course, I think 6 of those were against the Rams or something like that. So, I mean, at least he's not going against that in this game. If Sam Darnold is able to just keep playing the way we saw him play, against the Rams and just throughout the playoffs in general for the most part, he's been dealing with that injury. I think if he's able to control the ball that well, and they're able to have Kenneth Walker be that patient running back for them, you're right. The time of possession of this is really key for both sides, but I think more so for the Patriots. Yeah. All right. Was there anything we missed matchup-wise? Anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think we hit on everything.
Wow, that's about 50 minutes? That's a clean. That might be our cleanest cut show we've ever done. Although that was one matchup we talked about for 50 minutes.
Yeah, but it is the matchup. Like, this is our last time talk. Well, not our last time, but our last time talking football, like
to be
It's
played.
the last time before the new season starts. Okay,
There
look,
you go.
it's
There you
been a
go.
long day, and yes, I that's all I have to say about that. We'll be back next year, hopefully.
Well, you know all there's left to do then. Predictions.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were going with that. I was like, should I be worried or?
No, I wasn't gonna do anything crazy. I wasn't gonna throw a role play scenario at you like you did for me last show. But okay, so let me hear it for you, man. Do you just want to do scores, winner? Like, how do you want to do this?
Yeah. We'll go as deep as possible in this. I'll do it. I hate doing scores because I feel like they're so like naturally they are really like make or break. But it's just the Super Bowl, so why not? Um, I after everything we've talked about and after all the details and reviewing all of it, I I think it is going to be very difficult for the New England Patriots to win this game. I think that, and I mentioned it, the time of possession is going to be the most crucial part of this game for me. Where if whoever controls the time of possession, and I don't think it, I don't even think it needs to be a controlled time of possession. The Patriots need to dominate the possession time to in order to win this game, and I think that is way too difficult to do against this Seattle defense. And then not just the Seattle defense, but I think as well the Seattle special teams. You have
Mm,
Rashid Shaheed on the special teams, and something that we didn't really talk about, but he really has been a difference maker from the special teams role. And all it takes is, and we saw this against the 49ers, all it takes is one kickoff, one punt return. We saw it against the Rams. Like these things
we've
will
seen it with the
change
Seahawks
the,
in previous Super Bowls when
yeah,
they went against the Broncos.
this will be the difference maker for them, where it's like Seattle constantly finds ways, not just from the offensive standpoint, but from special teams to make the difference and make these impacts, which will, I think, wear the Patriots down. And yes, I do think this isn't going to be a blowout by any means. But I do think that this does become a win that Seattle walks away comfortably with the win. I'm going to say 31-17.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you for the most part here. I think it'll be something similar. I was thinking like 35-14 ish, if I'm being honest. Like I see kind of even more of a gap there between them. Just and that is mainly me
Thirty-five
believing it.
fifteen. What do you have the
14,
Patriots?
14,
Oh,
14,
okay.
14.
I'm like Patriots like 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
they go for two and they're so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, but yeah, I think 35-14, something like that. I just think the Seahawks defense is way too good. Everyone gets tired of hearing it all the time, the old adage of defense wins championships, but it holds true, and this defense is certainly Super Bowl championship worthy in my mind. So I agree with you. I think this is a game that the Seahawks should go in with confidence, thinking that they can win this game. And we see them have that confidence all season, especially in the playoffs. Like this is a team that has a lot of momentum and belief going into this game. So do the Patriots. I'm not saying that they don't. They have a lot of belief in themselves, and that's been a major part of Mike Vrabel and what he's done for the team is having this team believe in themselves as the season's gone along. I just think the Seahawks have too much firepower, both on offense and defense, that the Patriots won't be able to surpass that. Okay, actually, I do have one final thing for you, just a little fun one for you. Do you think there's a moment in this game where the Seahawks are on the 1 yard line and we're gonna have to, and it's gonna be a kind of like a full on like pause where even the broadcasters are gonna be like, okay, what are you gonna do here?
Okay. What I will say, just from a personnel standpoint, I'd understand if you wanted to get creative and throw the ball.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I think this iteration of the Seahawks and their offense is way more equipped and has way more options for them in a red zone offense than that Seahawks offense did, which was really good. Marshawn Lynch and those guys, like you could still do a lot with them, obviously. But I think with a team with Kenneth Walker, and then obviously JSN, even their tight end Barner, like Rashid Shaheed, like all those guys offer you a lot more packages that you could do with Kubiak in a situation like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw JSN lined up in the backfield next to Kenneth Walker in sort of a ponies situation there, right? Where you have like those two guys lined up back there.
If I see Cooper Cup against any DB in the red zone in single
Ooh.
coverage, I want
Well,
that back.
hey, listen, I'm a big Marcus Jones fan, so I'm not gonna just give that to him, but I do get what you're saying. Like in that short area, like yeah,
It,
Cooper
it,
Cup is
it's
yeah.
such an elite route runner where I
You
don't
get
think.
him on like a whip route right there. It's
Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly that's literally what I was thinking. Where it's like that route would be devastating for somebody, and I would watch him just strut into the end zone with no issue. Like You mentioned it best, where I think this Seattle offense, like ironically, is better fit to go for it on in the red zone, and especially on the 1 yard
And
line.
not have to run it. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
where there's passing options, and I look, the whole idea with them running the ball was like, oh, everyone expects it to be Marshawn Lynch, which you should still give him the ball. It's
Yeah,
fucking
you still
Marshawn
do
Lynch.
it. Yeah, it's Marshawn
Um,
Lynch.
but I do think that like this team just feels different. Like not just feels different, but is different from a personnel standpoint, where you can attack this team, attack his Patriots team differently, and attack them through the air in a goal line situation like that.
Yeah, and the aggressiveness that this team has. And we talked about it even like last week. The Mike McDonald and Kubiak, they're never going to let up off the gas. It's going to be from start to finish. They're going to be aggressive and they're going to try to kill you. But
Also,
clearly, we
especially
both are big believers in the Seahawks.
especially in the era of like analytics and saying like, oh, like you should go for it on this because of the AI is saying it, and
Yeah,
the numerically it makes sense, or whatever it is. Like it, I wouldn't be upset if somehow that ended up being a situation. And I think it would be even more successful if they were to, well, hopefully more successful for Seattle fans, if they are to do it.
yeah. Well, all right, there we go. Those are our matchups and our predictions. Very excited for this game. Can't wait to watch. Hey, it's been a really fun season, man. I've really enjoyed, not as an Eagles fan, but just as an NFL fan. This has been a really fun regular season, and then the playoffs especially. I think were highly entertaining. So I'm excited to see how the season ends here soon. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We will be back soon. We've got a lot of basketball stuff to catch up on here soon between the All Star picks, some crazy trades that have been happening. I had my phone on silent while we're doing this, so I'm not sure if anything else happened, but maybe the Bulls added another guard. We'll see. But we'll be back with some more basketball content soon. And then, of course, after the Super Bowl, we'll do a
Wait,
review.
wait,
Wait, did something actually happen?
yes.
God.
Hold up,
What?
I'm trying to find it. The Los Angeles Clippers are trading James Harden to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland and a second round pick from Shams. That was that was at 8:03.
It was 2 minutes ago. Wow, it was so funny when I was at the Clippers game last night because I was watching the Sixers. Shout out to my mom, by the way, fantastic. Thank you, mom, love you for that birthday present. But yeah, you texted me. It was like halftime of the game. And I
Yeah,
was going up to I was getting some snacks, and also now you were like, "Yo, they're gonna trade James Harden." I was like, "What?" Like I wasn't really looking at my phone, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And I'm looking around, like, because I'm into it dome. I'm like, "Are there any like Clippers fans talking?" Well, they're Clippers fans, but I'm like, "Are there any Clippers fans talking about this?" But yeah, it was what a dude, James Harden. Well, we like I said, we got a lot to talk about with the NBA soon, so we'll be back with the show for that soon. And then as the offseason approaches with the NFL, we'll be talking about the free agency stuff, maybe a little bit of draft stuff, and then we'll of course just be talking about what maybe to expect for the next season. But we'll have shows for you still every week. As we go through the year. So thank you everybody for listening. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you subscribe. We appreciate everybody that's been listening, watching, commenting, whatever it is, any interactions. We truly appreciate it. So have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll see you soon.